Hi, ladies. Unfortunately, I forgot to record the lesson Monday night, and so I'm going to do a quick lesson. And I'll do my best. I don't have much time to get through it, but I I don't want anyone to get behind or be left out. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Our lesson this week is called Meant for the Mission. This is the third lesson in our series on discipleship and being a servant of God and finding joy in the mission. I think sometimes we serve with a heart that is not joyful. And so that is something that I want to work on. And this week's lesson is focusing on compassion. And so the emphasis of this lesson is going to be that God sends his people not only with truth, but with tender hearts. Mission begins when we see others the way Jesus sees them. And I think this is very important because you've heard the expression, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. If we approach ministry through the lens of we have to convince people that what we know is the way it is and what we know is the most important thing, we can turn them off instead of letting them see that we are moved to through compassion. And we will talk more about what compassion is in a minute. But our focus for the joy focus is what joy? There is joy in loving people with the compassion of Christ. And I think that's very important. We're going to be looking at Matthew 9:35 through 38, but verse 36 is our main focus verse. And Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. And I think we need to remember that he was healing individual people. He wasn't just healing groups of people, large groups of people. And verse 36 says, "But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd." And so, even though he saw the multitudes, he was seeing the individual people. He was seeing who was sick. He was seeing who had a disease. He was seeing who was scattered and what all their problems were. Then saith he unto his disciples, The harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. And I think we all need to see ourselves as laborers who want to, um, through joy, serve the Lord and tell others about him. And then verse 38 says, Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest that he will send forth laborers into his harvest. So when we break this down, Jesus saw the multitudes of people, but Jesus noticed the people. He saw beyond the crowds and recognized the individuals. So let's keep that in mind. We can look at the multitudes of people that we know who are going down the wrong path and who are trying to live their own truth or who are actively living in sin. But if we just see that large group, it would probably seem impossible to make any impact at all or make a difference. We have to look at each individual person. He was moved with compassion. So compassion is more than feeling sorry about something. If I see that there's been a natural disaster and I just feel sorry for the people, that's one thing. But if I am stirred to take action, then that is compassion. If I'm stirred to go help someone muck out their house, if I'm stirred to donate money to an organization that I know is doing good work, like Samaritan's Purse or um, the Baptist Relief Group, um, then that is compassion. When I'm stirred to do something. Scattered sheep, like sheep having no shepherd. When people are scattered, they're weary, confused, lonely. They may be spiritually wandering. They're just lost. And it says the harvest truly is plenteous. So there are so many people in need. There's so many people in need of God's love. and that we can understand God still calls workers to go in love. And I think if we go with a heart of frustration, these people should know better. Um, these people are making bad choices, then that is not going to be the heart of compassion that He wants us to have. And so when we think of sheep, sheep are ignorant animals and they don't know much. Ignorance, the definition is a lack of knowledge. But really, when you're lacking knowledge, you don't know what you don't know. So something that another person may know and understand and make sense, and maybe it's something that they've implemented into their life. They know this. Someone who doesn't know, they really just don't know. And we can't be frustrated with them about that. An example that I gave in the lesson last night was I went to a school to visit, and it was an amazing school. The programs that were happening there just made me grieve that I had not gotten to teach in a school like that, or my own children had not gotten to be students in a school like that. And the phrase they kept saying over and over again is, you don't know what you don't know. You can't feel bad that you aren't implementing these practices into your school because you just haven't known that. And so that's part of what my work is with teachers is to help them learn. But in my Sunday school class Sunday, we were talking about the word ignorant. And, it's not a word that means stupid. It's a word that means you're just without knowledge. And so, how should the ignorance of God we see in our culture affect the way we share the gospel? Well, I think it should stir us to be compassionate, to be tenderhearted, because we should recognize that people just don't know. They're not out there living this life, this sinful life. I mean, not always. Sometimes, perhaps, they're making that choice. But sometimes they don't know there's a better way. Sometimes they haven't been taught. They didn't grow up in church. And we assume because there's a church on every corner that everyone knows the gospel. But that's not always true. So when we are comparing sheep, scattered sheep, I'm going to try to move this out of the way, to people who are without the gospel, who don't know about the gospel, people who are ignorant about that. Let's look at a few parallels. Scattered sheep are wandering without direction. People are the same way. They're searching for meaning, identity, and purpose, and it seems that they're searching oftentimes in the wrong places. But we know that Jesus is the way, and He's the one that gives us purpose once we follow Him. Scattered sheep are easy predators. I mean, they're easy prey for predators. Sheep will actually stand still while a predator just tears the meat right off of their bones. And my son had sheep, and that's what happened. Dogs got into the pen and just killed them. The sheep don't even try to defend themselves. People without the gospel are vulnerable to lies, deception, and harmful influences. So sometimes they're the same way. They just go along. They don't see the danger. Scattered sheep are hungry and they need pasture. People are spiritually empty and unsatisfied. But we know that Jesus is the bread of life. He's the one who satisfies our soul. Scattered sheep can be wounded and weary. People can certainly be the same way. They can carry grief, shame, fear, loneliness, burdens, and they just don't know that Jesus is the one that heals, restores, and gives rest and peace. Scattered sheep are isolated from the flock, and people who are ignorant about the gospel can feel disconnected from God and others. Maybe they've had church hurt and they just don't want any part of it because of a bad experience they've had. But we know that Jesus can gather people into His family. He's the one that can change hearts and opinions. Scattered sheep, they can't rescue themselves, just as people cannot save themselves from sin. But we know Jesus is the one who does that. He's the one that seeks and saves. Scattered sheep need to hear the shepherd's voice, just as people need truth and loving guidance. And Jesus is the one who is our shepherd and calls us by name. So, this is something to remember when we are looking at others who may need to hear the gospel. What is the view we have of that person? That they're just making bad decisions and they shouldn't do that? Or do we look at them as someone who is ignorant and they just don't know what they don't know? And that we are the one who God might use to plant seeds or, to lead them to salvation. So, how can we be compassionate? I read this week about something called a compassion list. We can be compassionate to anyone, people who need the Lord, or maybe people who are already saved, but they need some encouragement. And so, think about who you might be compassionate towards, someone in your family. Who can you encourage this week through a kind word, gesture? Um, just to let them know that you remember and that you are praying or that you are thinking about them. Those would be people in your family or your next door neighbors, maybe. And then who are people that you know that may just feel forgotten? Here's a lady in the middle picture, Miss Thursa Sloan. She's a lady in our church who's battling cancer right now and going through really tough treatments. And she's such an encouragement to the people that she meets every day at those treatments. Oftentimes, she will ask us to pray for someone that she met instead of praying for herself. And she sees this diagnosis and this tough road that she's having to walk as an opportunity to minister. And it's truly remarkable. It shows how God can use every situation if we let Him for His glory. And so these people may be elderly, sick, um, widows, widowers, and they just need some encouragement. And then people beyond your circle, maybe missionaries or disaster victims. The ladies in this picture are ladies who work in a women's prison in Zambia, Africa, and they are just witnessing to the women and telling them that even though they feel forgotten and they feel cut off from the world, that they are not forgotten by their Heavenly Father. And so we can pray for our missionaries, we can support missions, and we could even possibly send letters to missionaries if we're able to get their contact information. So how can we be compassionate? What's an act of compassion you could do this week? Could you send someone a card, make a phone call, make a visit, cook a meal? What about a new mom, someone that's recently had a baby? Could you take a meal and just encourage them? That can be a very hard time in a young couple's life. Can you pray with someone in addition to praying for them? Can you give to a need through either material objects, such as someone's home who's burnt? Could you give to that, or monetarily? And can you just be a good listener and listen without rushing? If you would like to pray for missionaries, these are the missionaries who had birthdays Monday, April 27th. You can see some are local states, or, I say local meaning within the United States. There are foreign missionaries on here. These missionaries are all either with the North American Mission Board or with the International Mission Board. If there's an initial, then that means that person is in an area that is so dangerous their true identity can't be disclosed. And so we just use their initials so that we can pray for them, and certainly God knows who they are. So these are some names that you could use to pray for missionaries. And then here is another link that you can go to at the North American Mission Board, and they periodically update this prayer list, and it gives actual prayer requests from these missionaries. And if you read through these, they're very much requests just like you and I might have. They're praying for their family, they're praying about surgeries, they're praying for their children right here. Pray for my wife and me as we continue to love and assist our 18-year-old daughter. I assume she has some type of disability. Pray for our older daughter and her husband as they are in the first month of fostering a 1-year-old baby boy and a 6-year-old brother. So these are very everyday requests that just because they're a missionary doesn't mean that they don't have the normal problems that we have, but yet they are on the mission field trying to serve the Lord and lead others to Christ. And so the least we can do, I feel like, is to be, um, holding the ropes while they are in the pit. So now we'll go on to something that you can do. But what joy to know that God can use simple acts of kindness to show His great love. And one way you can show His great love is to leave a tract along with a tip and a note for people who serve you. So these could be restaurant servers or hotel maids. And this is something I learned at the WMU conference by the president of the Kentucky State WMU last year. She says, I can't wait to get to heaven and see how many maids from the hotels that I have left these tracts and tips are in heaven. And she is excited about it and she does it with joy, not as a drudgery or not as something that she's afraid might not be successful. She does it knowing God can use it. So her note says, I pray you know Jesus, but if you don't, here's how you can. Have a blessed day. And I thought it might be nice to add a thank you. Thank you for serving me. Thank you for doing a good job. Thank you for the work that you do. I mean, something, because I think that's a very tough job that probably often goes unappreciated. And then I pray you know Jesus, but if you don't, here's how you can. She leaves a tip and she leaves a tract and a generous tip. A place you can order tracts is through the North American Mission Board, and I have a link there. These Three Circles Life Conversation guides. It's a 50 pack for $10. That's 20 cents each. You can't beat that. If you want to order those, you can do that from this link here at the North American Mission Board. And it does give a good plan of salvation. Then my journaling ideas, I wanted scattered sheep to represent the people who are ignorant about the gospel, who just don't know what they don't know. Here's a how-to video, how to make these little sheep. I'm not going to show you how to make them because she does such a great job showing you. You can just click on this link. It will take you to her YouTube video. But I also wanted an eye looking at the sheep. And so I created my eye like the picture down here in the bottom with the paper peeling back, and I'll show you how I did that. But I just think this is a really fun journaling page and one that has lots of meaning. So here is my journaling page. If you watch that video, it will show you how to make these little sheep. You just cut them out free-handed from different papers, and she even tells you how to collect your different papers to use. This is a pre-printed magazine page. This is some tea-dyed paper. This was coffee stain paper. Here's a book page, and here's one I just used the edge of a piece of corrugated cardboard. That's what I used. I just dabbed it in a little bit of black paint, dabbed it on the paper, and then I cut out the little sheep shape. And I love it because you can put their heads facing different directions to give a lot of personality to your little sheep. Now, to do this eye, I actually took a picture of my own eye using my phone. If you go to your camera and click the little circular that allows you to do a selfie. And when you zoom in close to your eye, take the picture, and then you can print it out and have a picture of your own eye. So that's what I did. You could use any picture of an eye. Then I cut it out. It was a rectangle. I went to the back. I decided where I wanted it to be on my page, and I flipped the page over and laid it down and drew with a pencil around the edge of my rectangle. So this is the paper of my eye, but I just went around it. Then I took this and I cut out a piece of hem page that exact same size. So I just used a sheet of hymnal paper. I had it here, but I don't think you necessarily need to see it. I cut out the rectangle and I glued it on the back of this paper. Like I just glued it right here on there. And I covered it with Mod Podge and I let it dry real good. After that dried, I used an X-Acto knife and just kind of cut an X through the the hymnal page that was Mod Podged and the page that was glued to, because it was just completely glued flat. Then I took scissors and I just kind of went in between the cuts that I made to make these different little flaps. And then I peeled those back and laid them back. After I laid them back, I took the page that had the eye and put glue just around the edges and glued it down. So then my eye shows through. You can see here that, that eye is just glued right around that edge. And then I glued back the paper that I'd peeled out. Now, this is going to mess up my page that I'm going to journal on next week. So what I plan to do is just glue this sheet down to the back, and then that will be hidden. You won't even be able to see it, and I will have these pages to work on. So it's actually on the back. After I watercolored, first thing I did was do all the watercoloring, the green and the blue, let all of that dry, and then I did the eye process of tracing the shape, tracing my hymnal page, which you wouldn't have to use hymnal page. You could just use this paper that the back side of it, it would just be white. But I kind of liked the inspiration page of the page, the hymn page popping out. So then after that, I cut the X's, made the little flaps. Then I glued the eye down just around the edges. And then that glued down the flaps. The sheep I put at the heading of the lesson. I did the scripture, and then I wanted to definitely remember the point that sheep are ignorant and they don't know what they don't know. So these are wandering lost sheep, and the people that we run in contact with are too. So my prayer that I wrote around the eye to remind me of what I'm looking at. Father, I'm thankful for your compassion. Help me to be more compassionate. Help me to see the lost sheep around me. Help me to recognize that they just don't know what they don't know. Make my heart tender toward others. Give me boldness to talk to, I'm sorry, uh, give me boldness to take the opportunities I have daily. Now I have make my heart tender toward others. Um, Give me boldness to take the opportunities I have daily to witness, encourage, and serve. Help me be a faithful laborer. Forgive me for hiding behind my wall of comfort. That's me behind my wall of comfort with eyes of judgment rather than love and compassion. So I just wrote that scribbly, it's not that it needs to be great for everyone to read. I actually tried to write a little bit scribbly. That's kind of a theme that a lot of artists do. They'll write scripture or they'll write a prayer or they'll write their thoughts and then they'll paint right over it. Um, it's just at their base layer, but I wanted to leave mine there for everyone to see. And then I'll put the date down here, and that is my lesson. And I'm sorry for forgetting to record last night, but hopefully I'll get it up there for you today.